Welcome to our channel. We are Caitlin and Patrick, two adventure seekers that recently sold all of our belongings to fulfill our lifelong dream of living sustainably. We purchased 15 acres of raw land in the mountains of East Tennessee. Since moving to our property, we have installed our solar setup for all of our power needs and our rainwater catchment system for all of our water needs. Join us as we continue to build out our off-grid homestead in the mountains and navigate this adventure we call life.
Hey guys,
We're back.
having a lazy Sunday today. We've had a lot of socialization.
Yeah.
Is that the, I don't know.
That's the right word.
Over the last couple weeks, between having your mom come visit, which we love your mom.
Of course. It's never a bad thing.
Yeah.
But it's also
probably one of my best friends. But
it's also socializing.
well,
so,
and then we had a
know.
couple of friends come up, and then we went to visit some friends for about a week, and then we went to a concert, and now we're back. So we're feeling exhausted from all the people
draining.
interactions.
We live on top of a mountain and we don't
live
socialize
away from
much.
people. Yeah. So the most socialization we get up here is either FaceTime or talking to our neighbors as we see them in passing,
Which is pretty rare.
Yeah. So we're back. We basically have been pretty lazy for the last few days and haven't done a whole lot of anything, which has been much needed. Unfortunately, we did have to get up here and winterize pretty much everything pretty much as soon as we got back. So we've hit 20-degree weathers in the evening, which is pretty dang cold, 20 degrees Fahrenheit, of course. So we had to winterize our pump house. So what that means exactly is we, instead of having our water line run directly to the camper, where we're able to basically pull water directly from sorry, where we're having to basically pull water directly from our tanks that are filtered, we are having to fill our 30-gallon water tank that's in the camper.
Yeah.
And we have to do that all winter. We actually used to do that year-round until this past summer, and we were like, why are we doing this? But in the winter, it's something we do have to do because that water line is exposed outside, so it will freeze if we don't do that.
Yeah.
So that was unfortunate, but it's that time of year, and we could go back and forth between, you know, like a day like today and the next few days is not supposed to freeze, so we could go back to that system, but it's kind of one of those things, once you put it up for the winter, it's kind of hard to get back out and want to redo.
This time of year is weird. It's you know, fall, so it kind of fluctuates between cold and not cold, and you know, we're getting ready for winter anyway, so we figure we might as well just make it ready so that we don't have to deal with anything until probably March-ish.
Yeah, well, that's kind of a tricky time of year too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it'll be several months of this, but it is what it is. You know, 30 gallons will last us a few days, and then we just fill it up again. It kind of is what it is, but that way we don't have to worry about our water tanks freezing and all that in the pump house. So, and we've had to run the heater in the pump house a little bit to keep, you know, well, the pilot light, it keeps about 50 degrees in there above freezing. So, and then we had to winterize the outdoor shower, unfortunately. It's very sad that we had to do that, because that is the only way we've showered up here since we've installed it.
It's really nice, and I already miss it. It's only been a few days, and you know,
already
the camper
showered
showers,
in the camper. It's pretty tight in
it's
there.
cramped, and it's, you know, you have to deal with the gray water still, so you know.
Yeah, that's the downside. In the winter, we run off of the camper's
Bugs
tank.
It's bug season.
Yeah, well, not quite. It's actually gotten a lot better. But yeah, so we had the 30-gallon tank in the camper, but when we're showering in the camper, which is really only in the winter, we go through that water a little bit faster. We do take like Navy showers, so it's like pretty quick, couple minutes, but it's definitely a sad day when we put the outdoor shower up.
Yeah.
And so also the washer, we kind of have to winterize.
Yeah, for the most part.
Well, we don't like fully winterize it because we do use it in the winter, obviously.
We don't wear dirty clothes all winter. Don't worry.
So basically what we do is just drain all the water out of the line and make sure it's not connected, so that when we're ready to use it, we can just reconnect it, use it. Because obviously flowing water, even in the 30s, it's not gonna freeze, but when we're done, we have to make sure that we keep winterizing.
I don't know what he's doing. You need to see this. Don't judge our pajamas. Buggo.
He wants to be on the video.
He's just being so patient, which is rare.
He said, is it time to eat yet?
The
Anyway, sorry, I got distracted.
squirrel.
So, yeah,
What is happening?
there we go. So, we've been working on that. What else have we been doing? Not freezing? Trying not to freeze?
Yeah,
It's
pretty
been
much.
chilly.
It's been super tame this
Oh,
week.
working in the leaves. We've done a lot of leaf work. And then,
And by we, she means...
well, he works full time, so my job is to do a lot of that stuff. But yeah, so we've been working on that.
Another thing about this time of year is it is fire season in Tennessee. October is the driest month up here. And in case you can't tell, the leaves and everything are kind of starting to fall on the ground, and it creates a lot of fuel. There are several wildfires going on around us. There's a couple south of us by maybe 10 or 20 miles, and there's a bunch over in North Carolina that are raging right now. So the air quality is not great. You can't really see the mountains all that well. For the most part, they're all controlled at this point. There is one in Nantahala National Forest in North Carolina that's still kind of going wild. It's right at 1,200 acres now, I think, that is currently burning in no control. So, you know, it's not exactly ideal conditions up here, but you know, we're just trying to be smart about it, making sure we cleaned up all the fuel, as Caitlin said. We took care of a lot of the leaves surrounding our building areas, and you know, try to do our best to stay cleaned up here in case anything does come closer. And we're also not doing any fires at night. So,
Unfortunately.
the
But it's
perfect time of
already
year for it.
smells like a campfire out here, so there's really no need. But that's another reason that we did clear all this down here, as well as a little bit of a fire break. Obviously, we still would have to clear a lot for it to be a true fire break, but
Better than nothing.
you can't really see it today. But at the top of the ridge back here,
Let's see if I can get my pointer finger in there.
that's
Up that
North
way.
Carolina. So any fires going on in North Carolina. So we are extremely close to Virginia, North Carolina, or in Tennessee. So anything that's going on in any of those 2 states, 3 states, I guess,
We get it.
we can definitely feel it. So super smoggy today. I mean, it's kind of pretty with the way the mountains are looking, but definitely something you have to keep an eye on. Keep an eye out for embers and things like that to make sure you're being safe and ready in case somehow it gets up here. So today we're going to be going a little more in depth with our solar system. This was always kind of the plan. If you watched our tour video of the property, we kind of did a brief overview of all that. But today we're going to kind of go a little bit more into the specs of it and how we've set up our solar. But yeah.
Yeah, beautiful day in Tennessee, so we'll take you along for the ride.
Yeah, we've had a couple weeks off here. Well, they haven't been off, but we've been working on some other projects and haven't really had the chance to set up a new video and upload it. So we're going to show you guys the solar system now, and yeah, we'll get into it.
There you go.
Welcome back.
All right, so like we said, we're going to go through our solar. So this is one of 2 of our solar grids. This was the original solar grid we installed when we first moved up here full time. It's consisting of 6 200-watt panels, 12-volt panels made by Rich Solar. They're wired in series, and they are attached to an eco-worthy solar tracker, which, if you're not familiar with them, basically has a little photo cell up on the top of the panels that tracks where the sun is at and orients it towards it. That eco-worthy tracker is powered by a car battery, which is trickle charged by this little bitty solar panel. So essentially, if you want to come over and we can show them the backside, the little panel is run to an itty bitty charge controller under here, which is wired to the car battery. The car battery is in a little watertight box, so it doesn't get rained on or nastied up, gunked up, whatever. But anytime the sun's out, it's also powering not only everything on our whole off-grid setup, but also the power system that allows this tracker to work. Along with the tracker is a wind meter, so just a little anemometer wind vane down here. Essentially what that's for is if the winds get too high in the vicinity of the panels will set themselves flat. That little anemometer spins and generates a voltage, and once the voltage hits a certain set point, that tells the tracker, hey, it's dangerous to be pointed anywhere other than flat, and it flattens the panels so that if the winds do kick up really hard, they're not damaged. We did concrete this thing in the ground, but you never know. If we ever get super high wind gusts, like 90 miles an hour, we don't want this very expensive setup to be ripped out of the ground and ruined. Once we got this tracker installed, we did run the PV wires, the panel voltage wires, from the solar panels through conduit underground about 90 feet over to the office where the rest of the components for the solar setup are. That was a pain in the butt. Okay, we don't have any heavy equipment here. The soil is very rocky and heavy with clay, so digging that trench to a reasonable depth, 18 inches, was disastrous, but rewarding because we got it done. We did it all by hand. We did use a little bit of machinery like a stump grinder, which was not smart because that's not what it's designed for, but it did kind of give us a starting point and allowed us to kind of track a straight-ish line, straight-ish, because there's a lot of rocks. So it was all done by hand, but now it's in its permanent resting place. And yeah, so again, 1200 watts of solar, 12 volt panels here. And then, all right, so I don't know if you can see, but this little bald spot here is kind of the direction the trench went from when we ran the PV wires from our solar tracker to the inside of the office. Basically tracks down around. There's a big rock right there that we kind of had to navigate around, and maybe we can put some pictures of the dig process in the video as well. But it runs down through here, goes over to next to where Caitlin's at, and cuts a 90 straight across into the office. So this is where the wires from the panels come in. These are a couple of accessory things that we had to put in, like wiring for the 30 amp plug for the camper and the generator input. You know, a plug from when we have to run straight off a generator, not charging the batteries. But next to this, we've also got a grounding rod. So again, one of the things, electricity, it's a big metal component. We wanted to make sure everything was grounded really well. So it's an 8-foot rod that's pounded all the way into the ground. Again, major pain in the rear end because the soil is so rocky and it's a copper wire. Copper is pretty soft. So, but all that's there so that everything that is connected to this office and all of our electrical components are grounded. We also have another 8-foot grounding rod that the panels on the sun tracker are directly grounded to, so they are independent from this system here. That way we have kind of redundancy on grounding systems. Okay, so this is the second set of panels. This adds an extra 800 watts of solar input. So they're 200 watt panels each. The difference is these panels are 24 volt panels, and that's important because our system is technically wired for a 24 volt system. It's not quite as important for those because when the power comes from those panels and go into the charge controller, it converts it to a 24 volts. You can look up the math on that. It's a whole lot of hokey science that I don't fully understand. But what that means is we had to set these up on 2 different sets of systems inside, which Caitlin's going to talk about in a second. These were installed earlier this summer, and it's been a game changer. Before, you know, we've added appliances here and there, and that the original solar system did fine, but once we started adding like extra refrigerators and some other things that we wanted to have to increase, you know, quality of life here, we needed more power. So now that we've installed those 4 panels, it's drastically cut down on how often we have to run like a generator for backup. So that's the 2 sets of panels. Now we'll take you inside and show you the heart of the operation and the rest of the components.
Alright guys, so this is the heart of our solar system. This is in our office / living room shed. So to give you guys a little bit more of the specs of the batteries, these are 12 volt batteries that are wired in series and parallel, which creates a 24 volt system. So what that means is that we're able to have electronics or appliances that could run on 240 volts instead of just 120. So if we did a 12 volt system, we wouldn't be able to have the 240 volts, like say for a dryer or an oven, which is something we probably won't ever really use, to be honest, because it just takes so much power at 240 volts. But it's good. We wanted to have it just in case on the road that we were able to, but the 24 volt system just allows us to be able to basically power more down the road if we decide to do that. Most of our appliances are probably going to be propane, so I don't think that'll be a concern, but we just wanted to have that option later on without having to change a lot of the components. So these are also rich solar batteries, 200 amp hours each, but because they're wired in series and parallel, that only together, instead of becoming 400 amp hours, it's still just 200 amp hours. So we have about almost 8,000 watt hours within these batteries here. Which for the way we're living right now works really well as long as it's sunny. Like Pat said, the panels we added on the roof have made a big difference in our not having to run the generator as much. So to kind of go into some detail here, we have the 2 charge control panels. So you can see these wires up here. That is coming from the trench that we dug out there and the conduit from the solar panels that are on the sun tracker.
and it's also from the solar panels on the roof. So they come in here. I'm gonna step up here and try to fall. They come in here to this little breaker box. If I can open it. And basically this is a shut off. So we can shut off, which we actually need to label these, which is which.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty easy to figure out, but still wouldn't hurt to label it. But we can turn these off at any time. We can turn them off separately. So we don't have to basically turn off both systems. If we're working on one, we can turn them off separately. These panels are also grounded to our grounding rod out here as well. And then this right here, this is coming from our panels up top. So it's a charge controller.
Watch out.
This is our charge controller for the panels on the roof. Basically, it can take up to 60 amps.
Yes.
Yeah. So this one can have up to 60 amps, which I think we're at 50 on the roof, I believe, somewhere around there. So we're kind of almost maxing this out as much as we would want to. But from the breakers here, your wires come in, your PV wires, and then these wires here, they actually go to our distributor, which is basically a giant bus bar with fuses inside. So right now you only see the one light and it's green and it's powered, which means all of these fuses are good in here. They are different size fuses depending on what they're powering. But basically this is another safety feature that if something were to go wrong, the fuse would bust. We'd have a red light here and a red light whichever fuse is broken. We have extra fuses. But what that would prevent is these from basically being fried in an event of a power surge or something of that nature. And these are also Bluetooth, which is really nice. We'll kind of show you that app here in a minute. But we're able to basically see how much charge is coming in from each individual one of these, how much charge is on the batteries, and how much power that we're actually using from the inverter. So from there, this was the one from down at the solar panels, the tracker, yeah, sorry, my words. Again, we can switch that one off as well, but it directly comes in here. There's a shunt here for the negative so that there's just one wire going in and not 8. So, but this distributor is really nice because now we know if there's an issue, we'll know exactly which one has the issue. And then we also have a cutoff here. This is where it goes to the battery. There's a 300
it's a 300 amp fuse.
Yeah, 300 amp fuse here between this and the battery is also another protection, so that we're able to protect the batteries and also the inverter and also everything down the line. It's just a redundant system to be able to make sure that we're not going to screw up any of the components because these are not cheap.
Yeah.
So from the distributor as well, the inverter gets power. So the batteries come directly into the distributor. Everything else is powered through the distributor. So the inverter comes in here, or is connected in here. There's also a fuse for the inverter. And from there, we basically, I'm gonna get up here.
Oh boy.
Maybe. We have our power cables that go to our breaker over here.
Make sure I'm looking at it.
Can you get the breaker in there?
Yeah.
So our power cables come in here to the breaker, which powers up our breaker box, which is what everything is wired to. From this point, it is all pretty much wired exactly like every home. And then you'll see this large black cable coming through the wall. That's actually our generator cable, and that allows us to be able to charge. So this is a inverter and charger, 24 volt. So when we're low on charge, we don't get a lot of sun, we're actually able to turn the generator on and charge these separate from this whole system. And like I said,
careful.
From in here, it's pretty much wired just like a regular breaker box. You'll notice this standby right here. So what that is, we also, in an effort to have redundancy, we have added a transfer switch out on the other side of the shed, which I think Pat just kind of pointed out when we were out there.
Mm-hmm.
And what that does is allows us to shut this entire system off, plug our generator directly into the shed, and power the entire property just off the generator. So it's not charging. So when we first installed this system, we had a few issues. We had an issue with our inverter originally, and without an inverter we had no power. So what we had to do for a few weeks actually was run directly off the generator. And the reason it has this little switch is this is your main power coming from the inverter. So when we have our generator powering everything and not charging the system, we actually turn that off, and then this is where the generator power comes through. So it's just a safety precaution that there's no backfeed. It's more for if we were to ever get shore power, so we're not potentially backfeeding the lines, and the linesmen come in to work on it and they could get electrocuted. So that actually I think is code if you have shore power, which we don't, but it's just we're not really good at remembering things sometimes. So we wanted to put that in as a safety precaution to know that we're not accidentally putting power into these systems when we don't want to be. Again, that's like a backup, mainly if we had to shut our solar system down for some reason, or maybe some of our batteries are bad and we had to get new ones. It just gives us the opportunity to still have power. It does cost money because you have to run with gas, but anyway. So that's pretty much it. And then we have all of our breakers that power this building. This 30 amp right here actually powers the camper. So I think we've shown you that plug out there before. It's just a regular RV plug-in style, so it goes directly outside to plug into that. And then the rest of these are powering this building. I think it's the only places we have power on the property.
Yeah,
and
for right now.
I just added this new breaker the other day. It is off. That's for a future project. As you can kind of see, there's sheetrock in here now. There was not before, so that'll be a future video of us hanging that sheetrock. But yeah, that's for a future project. We need to go ahead and get it in so we can get the sheetrock up, and that will be something we do in the spring. But it's good for now, just leave it off. And this cable here, this comes in from the Starlink on the roof. It's a power cable for that, so that has nothing to do with the solar system. But yeah, I think do you have your phone on you?
Somewhere. Yeah. In my pocket.
I'll show them that. Oh,
while you're pulling the app up, there's a couple things that we could talk about. So I mentioned we have the two different solar panel grids. You'll notice that the charge controllers are different sizes. That has to do with the open circuit voltage. So anytime you get new panels, you have to look at not only the voltage that they're rated for, but also the open circuit voltage, because that's going to dictate what size charge controller you need. The other thing is that this inverter, it's an Ames power inverter. It's got a 6,000 watt output capacity. So essentially at any given time, if we need to run 6,000 watts worth of load on this thing, it's capable of doing that. It's also got an 85 amp current input charge capacity. So essentially we could run a generator that could output up to 85 amps and charge the batteries, and that inverter would still be fine. So just a couple little tidbits about the system.
Yeah, and 6,000 watts may not seem like a lot for like a normal household, but we are off the grid. So we, at the most, just like at any given moment, if we're not watching TV or running like the microwave or our little oven situation, we're pulling probably 300 max watts. And that's with, the entire camper being plugged in. So the refrigerator, the furnace, any overhead fans that we have on in there, and then we have the refrigerator in here. This fan pretty much always stays on just to help with air circulation. So 300 watts is kind of our average, I would say, give or take a little bit, depending on if the fridges are kind of like not surging, but cycling at the time. So 6,000 watts, we've never even come close to.
No.
Like, I think the most we've run at once was 1,500, maybe 2,000.
We've done a couple thousand once or twice, but that was like on a hot day when the fridges were both cycling and then we were microwaving or toaster ovening.
So for us, it's plenty. For like a normal household, that's probably like if you had a washer and dry running and a dishwasher and like all these things, like it probably would be maxing it out. But for our house, since we do live off the grid, when we build it one day in the future, we're going to have mostly propane appliances. So that's going to drastically decrease how many watts we're needing to pull at one time. And we don't really use a microwave a whole lot. Our oven's going to be propane. We do have an electric oven now. That's like an air fryer oven combo toaster oven thing. And that does pull quite a few watts, but usually we're not running it for like an extensive period of time, like at the most maybe 20-30 minutes. So
or at the same time
500 watts at that point.
Or at the same time as other appliances. We get pretty good at kind of recognizing, or at least adding up the potential watts draw that we're using, just to, you know, try and be cognizant of our storage.
Sure. And that's where this actually comes in handy. So this is our battery monitor. You can't see, there's actually, on this negative side, there's a like a bus bar for the negative here where this plugs into. You can't really see it right now, but it comes to this over here, and this tells us our voltage on our batteries right now, which we're doing really well because it's sunny today.
Oh, we're in float charge.
Yeah, well, one of them's
float.
in float, one of them's in absorption.
There you go.
Because I guess the BMS is a little funky communicating with those. But anyway, so this here allows us to directly see our battery voltage, how many watts we're pulling, how many is coming in, all that stuff. But the best part about this, it's actually hooked up to Bluetooth. And like we said, these are also Bluetooth. So we're able to come into our phone here and basically click on that. So we're at 87% charge. Basically, it's saying we're using 0 watts, which isn't entirely true, but what that means is we're directly using sun power right now, because our batteries are almost full, so they have to be careful. They are lithium batteries. I don't know if we, lithium iron phosphate, I'm not sure if we mentioned that or not, but basically they're starting to get full, and it has to be careful in this last bit of charge, so really slowly, meticulously charge them so that it doesn't overcharge them. So now it just jumped up. We're gaining 500 watts almost, but that will fluctuate here and there. And then, so we have our office panels. Those are the ones on the roof. And
so you can see
it's in a float charge there, which means it's topping the batteries off essentially.
Yeah. And
then again here, from the panels, the sun tracker, we're getting 800 watts at the moment, and it's an absorption charge, which means it's basically dumping all that power into the batteries as it comes in.
At a high voltage.
Yeah. The other cool thing is, maybe we'll show you guys this when we're not almost fully charged, but typically it will show you how many watts you're receiving at that point. So if we were running, like, say, the AC unit in the camper or something, we could run that right now and probably still be gaining wattage because we're getting so much sun at the moment. Mm-hmm. So typically that would say an amount, whether it's in the negative or the positive, that we're getting how many watts in or out based on how much sun we're getting. So it's a really good feature to have. It's just Bluetooth, so we can't use it when we're not here, but when we are here, it's just really nice to be able to look at your phone and kind of see what's going on. Pretty much anywhere on the property, there is a limit to how far you can go away and still see all of it, but it's also got a quick view here, so that shows you how many kilowatts we've gotten today, which we've gotten like
almost
6. Almost 6. And how many watts are coming in at the moment, if it's in float charge, absorption charge, and all that good stuff, and then your percentage. So you can have a quick view of everything going on with the system, which has been really, really handy to have.
Yeah. All right, so one other nice thing about this is we can look at the history of our charge. So one nice thing about kind of tracking your sun over time is that you can see trends in the data. So right now you can kind of see right now I've got it set to percent charge and then overall power wattage. So you can kind of see when we went into the float charge and absorption, and it's just kind of bouncing around. But you can also look historically and see, okay, well, you know, one of these days we had really low charge, or that's a nighttime, or, you know, we've had a really good day this time. And if you look at the individual panels or the actual charge controllers on here, you can actually see what percentage of time, if it'll load, it actually spends in each state of charge. So you can see we've been in bulk charge a lot lately. There's a couple days back here where we ended up into like absorption or float charge, but you can kind of see the amount of time and the cumulative watts that you've pulled in for that day over the history of having that piece of equipment. So it's a really nice thing to track.
Lifetime total watts, which is really cool because that seems like a lot. I think the average household uses like 30 kilowatts a month, so that's probably not that much, but for us, we don't use near that. Yeah,
but it's just a really good tool for us to keep track over time, and we can look at these data going forward and see, okay, well, we know that October, the last 2 years, has been a rough month for solar, so you know, that's an example. I don't know that's actually true, but we can actually look at that and say, okay, well, we know we're going to need the generator more over this period of time based on the last couple of years of trending. So just another way of keeping track of how we consume our power, how we monitor it, and then try and planning for the future. So.
Also, one other component, this is separate from the rest of our solar system, but it's something we actually had to purchase when our inverter was bad because we needed power throughout the night without having to run the generator constantly. So this is our Goal Zero Yeti 500X. The cool thing about this, it is portable power. It only has 500 watts, so obviously it's a little bit limited on how much, like how many tools or things we could run off of it, but you can charge it through your cigarette adapter in your car, and you can also charge it through the wall. The way we keep it charged is we actually have a small solar panel that goes out here. It's only like 10 or 20 watts, I think. Yeah, you can see 10 watts coming in right now and 4 going out because I'm actually charging the gimbal as I'm using it. But the one really cool thing we do like about this, one, it's portable, so when we go in our van on adventures, we are able to take this with us, and we have a 100-watt folding solar panel that sometimes we will charge this off of if we're not getting decent sun. But as you can see, we're at 100%. A lot of times we'll charge like our headphones, our watches, our phones, and that sort of thing off of this just because it's convenient in one location. So you can see we have all these cables plugged in. You've got a couple USBs, a couple USCs, and then of course you've got regular AC outlets there and your 12-volt outlets as well. So this has been really handy. We're not sponsored or anything by Goal Zero. I mean, unless they want to reach out and sponsor us, that would be great, but
well, that thing has been a rock star, so I mean, Goal Zero, good job.
Yeah, I mean, we boondocked for a week in the Smokies at Elkmont over the summer, and we basically used this the whole week to charge all of our devices. We were able to take it out of the van and put the 100-watt solar panel on it and charge it within a few hours in direct sunlight. So that's one really, really nice thing that we have, because we could do solar in the van and we've thought about it, but to me this is much better because we can take it when we need it. If we're just going for a little picnic and we want to run some kind of electrical grill or something, we could. I mean, we wouldn't do that, but you could. But it's just nice that we can take it in and out of the van as needed, keep it charged here, use it for different things. We also use this to charge or power our TV when we watch like movie night on the deck or things like that. So we don't have to run an extension cable out there. It's just really versatile. I would definitely recommend getting something like this. There's a million different devices out there that do the same type of thing, and I would definitely recommend having something of this nature. Eventually, it would be nice to get a larger one that we're able to basically quietly run our power tools off, like when we're building the house and that sort of thing, but this thing has been clutch.
All right, so one more thing. We want you guys to have a realistic expectation if you decide to put in your own little solar system. We talked about the total wattage that our panels are capable of generating. So the ones out on the tracker have a total of 1,200 watts of power that they could bring in. The ones up here have a total of 800 watts that they could bring in. So you'd think that our system would be able to generate 2,000 watts of power coming into the charge controllers and thereby into the battery. That's not always the case. We're a huge proponent of solar systems, but we want everybody to be realistic. So technically, on a good sunny day, even though we're capable of pulling in 1,200 watts from the panels down at the tracker, average is like 850 watts from the panels to the charge controllers into the batteries.
We have seen it get up to 1,100, even 1,200 watts, but it's rare and not for very long.
Yeah, and you usually only see that on like really crystal clear days, like the day after it rained. Something about it just makes the air a little bit more clean and clear and everything. Same thing goes for the panels up top. Even though we're technically able to get 800 watts, I think the best I've seen off of that is probably 750, which is really good. And one part of that may be distance. So if you know anything about electrical, the farther you go, you have something called voltage drop. So technically, the panels on the tracker should not be run farther than about 100 feet from your charge controller, because beyond that point, the voltage drop is really high and you don't maximize the efficiency of those panels. So we're kind of pushing those limits. Some of that is dependent on the voltage of the panels. Some of it's dependent on the size and the type of the wire. If you want to know more about that, there are some great manuals that actually Victron makes that talks about wiring diagrams and wiring systems for solar output. But you know, we want to, like I said, we want to be realistic and kind of explain why we had to add more on. You know, solar panels aren't 100% efficient, and on cloudy days, you're lucky to get 20-25% efficiency, which would be, you know, chump change. So, you know, it's just it's one thing you have to think about. Distance, voltage, all of those things have to be taken into account when you're putting all this together. So
yeah, it's a lot to learn. I will say I would think our panels are pretty efficient, though. I've seen some that are quite a bit less efficient and some that are more efficient, but I think for the cost of the panels, it definitely, the efficiency is really good, in my opinion.
Yeah, and one other thing too, so we mentioned that this is wired up for a 24-volt system. You can do it in a 12-volt configuration. You can do it in a 24. You can do it in a 48. It really just depends on what you want to do. The only benefit to upsizing or downsizing the voltage that I've seen, don't quote me because I don't know everything, is that if you run a higher voltage system, you can run smaller wires because the amp current can be smaller for the same wattage. So to give you an example, 24 volts at 20 amps is going to require a bigger wire than 48 volts at 10 amps. There's an equation out there that you can use to calculate that, but that is one benefit. And I don't know if hindsight we would have done a 48 volt system because it's kind of a pain, and the components are usually a lot more expensive. But if you're thinking about doing like a whole house, like a residential house, normal consumption, electric stoves, all that, 48 volt system may be good for you because you can run smaller wires and power a lot more things on smaller circuits. So just something to consider.
Yeah, and you'll want to make sure that your inverter is, like ours is a 24 volt. Where is it?
Right here. Bless you. My goodness.
24 volt inverter. So if we wanted to switch to 12 volt or 48 volt, we would have to buy a new inverter and probably some different size wires. I don't know. I mean, if they're oversized, it's probably fine. They just can't be undersized.
Actually, if they're oversized, you get more resistance in the wire.
So you get less power.
Yeah, so you'll
coming
get
in.
a voltage drop because the resistance in the actual wire itself will overcome the voltage transfer.
More you know.
All right, guys, we really appreciate you coming along today and checking out our solar system. If you guys have any questions about any of that, please drop them in the comments below. And hopefully it gave you an idea. We're definitely not experts on solar. We've learned a lot over the last year and a half. We had no clue what we were doing when we first set it up. And in fact, we actually set it up wrong the first time.
First couple times.
It wasn't entirely our fault, though. The company, which we won't name or recommend, that we bought the kit from, I wouldn't recommend buying a kit. We should have just bought all the components separately. But being new to it, we thought buying a kit would make things easier, and in some ways it did.
Yeah.
Because we had all the components, we didn't have to like make too many of the wires and all that, but we've had to do that over the last year and a half. We've changed a lot about this system. I think it's finally in a really good spot, which is why we feel comfortable putting the sheetrock up now. Yeah. Because we kind of monkeyed with it for a long time to get it set up to where it is now, but it's very nice and tidy now, and we're happy with it. It's been a great system. We would recommend these products. We've used both Victron and Ames products together. I will say Victron is a really nice company as far as like you have the Bluetooth capabilities, and both of them have been really good with customer service too, because we have had to call several times to figure out things that we don't know. But we've gotten a lot better at it. So if you guys have any questions about this, let us know. And join us next week. We're going to go over our entire water system here, our water rain catchment system. So anything else to add?
I don't think so.
You may notice our Christmas decorations. We're in the holiday spirit already.
To be festive.
Yeah. So, but thank you guys, and we will see you next week.